Chapter 5. Advice from a Caterpillar. The caterpillar and Alice looked at each other for some time in silence. At last the caterpillar took the hookah out of its mouth and addressed her in a languid, sleepy voice. "Who are you?" said the caterpillar. This was not an encouraging opening for a conversation. Alice replied rather shyly,
I hardly know, sir, just at present. At least I know who I was when I got up this morning, but I think I must have been changed several times since then."
"What do you mean by that? Explain yourself."
"I can't explain myself, I'm afraid, sir, because I'm not myself, you see."
"I don't see."
"I'm afraid I can't put it more clearly, for I can't understand it myself to begin with, and being so many different sizes in a day is very confusing."
"It isn't."
"Well, perhaps you haven't found it so yet, but when you have to turn into a chrysalis, you will some day, you know, and then after that into a butterfly, I should think you'll feel it a little queer, won't you?"
"Not a bit."
"Well, perhaps your feelings may be different. All I know is it would feel very queer to me."
"You? Who are you?" Which brought them back again to the beginning of the conversation. Alice felt a little irritated at the caterpillar's making such very short remarks, and she drew herself up and said very gravely,
"I think you ought to tell me who you are first."
"Why?" Here was another puzzling question, and as Alice could not think of any good reason, and the caterpillar seemed to be in a very unpleasant state of mind, she turned away. "Come back. I've something important to say." This sounded promising, certainly. Alice turned and came back again. "Keep your temper."
"Is that all?"
said Alice, swallowing down her anger as well as she could. "No," said the caterpillar. Alice thought she might as well wait, as she had nothing else to do, and perhaps, after all, it might tell her something worth hearing. For some minutes it puffed away without speaking, but at last it unfolded its arms, took the hookah out of its mouth again, and said, "So you think you're changed, do you?"
"I'm afraid I am, sir. I can't remember things as I used, and I don't keep the same size for 10 minutes together."
"Can't remember what things?"
"But I've tried to say how doth little busy bee, but it all came different."
"Repeat, you are old, Father William," said the caterpillar. Alice folded her hands and began.
"You are old, Father William," the young man said, "and your hair has become very white. And yet you incessantly stand on your head. Do you think it's your head it is right?" "In my youth," Father William replied to his son, "I feared it might injure the brain. But now that I'm perfectly sure I have none, why, I do it again and again." "You are old," said the youth, "as I mentioned before, and have grown most uncommonly fat. Yet you turn the back somersault in at the door. Pray, what is the reason of that?" "In my youth," said the sage, as he shook his grey locks, "I kept all my limbs very supple. By the use of this ointment, 1 shilling the box. Allow me to sell you a couple." "You are old," said the youth, "and your jaws are too weak for anything tougher than suet. Yet you finished the goose with the bones in the beak. Pray, how did you manage to do it?" "In my youth," said his father, "I took to the law and argued each case with my wife, and the muscular strength which it gave to my jaw has lasted the rest of my life." "You are old," said the youth. "One would hardly suppose that your eye was as steady as ever. Yet you balanced an eel at the end of your nose. What made you so awfully clever?" "I have answered 3 questions, and that is enough," said his father. "Don't give yourself airs. Do you think I can listen all day to such stuff? Be off, or I'll kick you downstairs." "That is not said right," said the caterpillar. "Not quite right, I'm afraid. Some of the words have got altered."
"It is wrong from beginning to end," said the caterpillar decidedly, and there was silence for some minutes. The caterpillar was the first to speak. "What size do you want to be?"
I'm not particular as to size, only one doesn't like changing so often, you know.
"I don't know." Alice said nothing. She had never been so much contradicted in all her life before, and she felt that she was losing her temper. "Are you content now?"
Well, I should like to be a little larger, sir, if you wouldn't mind. 3 inches is such a wretched height to be.
"It is a very good height indeed," said the caterpillar angrily, rearing itself upright as it spoke. It was exactly 3 inches high.
But I'm not used to it,
pleaded poor Alice in a piteous tone, and she thought to herself,
I wish the creatures wouldn't be so easily offended.
"You'll get used to it in time," said the caterpillar, and it put the hookah into its mouth and began smoking again. This time Alice waited patiently until it chose to speak again. In a minute or two, the caterpillar took the hookah out of its mouth and yawned once or twice and shook itself. Then it got down off the mushroom and crawled away into the grass, merely remarking as it went, "One side will make you grow taller, and the other side will make you grow shorter."
One side of what? The other side of what?
thought Alice to herself. "Of the mushroom," said the caterpillar, just as if she had asked it aloud, and in another moment it was out of sight. Alice remained looking thoughtfully at the mushroom for a minute, trying to make out which were the 2 sides of it, and as it was perfectly round, she found this a very difficult question. However, at last she stretched her arms round it as far as they would go, and broke off a bit of the edge with each hand.
And now which is which?
She said to herself, and she set to work very carefully, nibbling first at one and then at the other, and growing sometimes taller and sometimes shorter, until she had succeeded in bringing herself to her usual height. It was so long since she had been anything near the right size that it felt quite strange at first, but she got used to it in a few minutes and began talking to herself as usual.
Come, there's half my plan done now. How puzzling all these changes are. I'm never sure what I'm going to be from one minute to another. However, I've got back to my right size. The next thing is to get into that beautiful garden. How is that to be done, I wonder?
As she said this, she came suddenly upon an open place, with a little house in it about 4 feet high.
Whoever lives there, thought Alice, it'll never do to come upon them this size. Why, I should frighten them out of their wits.
So she began nibbling at the right-hand bit again, and did not venture to go near the house till she had brought herself down to 9 inches high.